A global namaste to you all. Welcome to today's live session for the Hindu Academy. We meet every Saturday, 2 o'clock UK time. We have a live session in which we have a focus topic. Today's focus topic is going to be on one of the very dear texts in the Hindu tradition, which is known as the Bhagavad Gita. And then after we watch the video and we have a little discussion around this, we will open up for general Q&A on anything to do with Hinduism. Now, how can you, the viewer, get involved? So you can watch us on Facebook or YouTube on our channels at Hindu Academy. But more importantly, you can like, share, subscribe, share this broadcast with friends and family, and more importantly, join in the conversation by asking your questions, sharing your thoughts and your comments. So the Bhagavad Gita is actually one of the most prominent Hindu texts, forming the part of the Indian epic known as the Mahabharata. And it was originally written in Sanskrit and is believed to have been composed somewhere between the 5th and the 2nd century BCE. And more commonly known as just the Gita, it's often used as an introductory text to Hinduism for the Western audiences. And it's done in a narrative style, and the tale of the Bhagavad Gita is told as a dialogue between Arjun, a warrior prince, and his charioteer, who was Lord Krishna. So whilst Arjun doubts whether he should go into battle, Krishna explains that he must fulfill his dharma or his duty as a warrior. And in his explanation, Krishna discusses the 4 classical schools of yoga, which is Gyan, the path of knowledge, Bhakti, the path of devotion, Karma, the path of action, and Raja, which is the path of meditation. So the Bhagavad Gita defines yoga as the process by which a person can connect with the absolute, thereby attaining self-realization. And it's a 700-verse Hindu scripture that provides a synthesis of several key philosophical concepts of Hinduism. And yoga in a narrative format is the 6th book in the Mahabharata, one of India's most epic, famous poems. And the word Bhagavad Gita means Song of the Lord, referring to one of the central characters of the narrative, Lord Krishna. It takes place in the battle of Kurukshetra, fought between Arjun's family and the allies, the Pandavas, and those of Prince Duryodhan and his family, the Kauravas. And in this battle, Lord Krishna serves as Arjun's charioteer for the battle. And when Arjun sees that both sides of the family are going to fight, he refuses to take part and has to be persuaded by Lord Krishna to fulfill his duty as a warrior. And so we're going to delve deeper into this, but it's a very, very exciting piece of literature. And we would like you to watch this little video first, and then we will come back and have a discussion around it. So bear with me as I share the video.
First of all, the scriptures in Hinduism come in 2 flavors. One set of scriptures are called scriptures of authority, and they are the things like Vedas and the Upanishads. They are highly poetic, very kind of subtle, and do not have gods and goddesses. These are the scriptures of authority, the Upanishads. Then the second set of scriptures we have created, but they are very subtle, very poetic, but very difficult to grasp. The second set of scriptures we produce are called the Smriti scriptures, which are of lower authority, but are very colorful and they engage our minds. Even the stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata belong to this second set of scriptures. Because they engage our attention. Because that's lies for like colorful stories through which we can relate to the idea of religion that are already in the scripture of authority, the Upanishads. That's why they're both necessary. But you say, but still, in fact, in most Hindu homes today, if you ask, do you have a single Upanishad? 0. You say, you got Smriti scriptures, Mahabharata, you say, yeah, we have Ramayana, Mahabharata. But the scripture that most Hindus relate to, or will swear by, if I can use the word, is the Bhagavad Gita. So what is the role of Bhagavad Gita and where does it occur? The Bhagavad Gita occurs in the story of Mahabharata, which is a scripture of lower authority. It's an epic. It's still colorful storytelling. And yet, right at the heart of it sits this gem of, if you like, philosophic heart of Hinduism called the Bhagavad Gita. So even though it is in the Smriti scripture, it contains the teaching of the Upanishads, the Shrutis. That's why it straddles both the sides. Bhagavad Gita is a beautiful script. That's why most Hindus relate to the Bhagavad Gita. They will have the Bhagavad Gita in their homes. So what is it and what is its role? You see, the Bhagavad Gita is, if you like, a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield of Mahabharata. Now, I personally, as I told you, always use your rational faculties when you come to terms with religion. When I look at there 700 verses, there is no way they could have had a dialogue of 700 verses in the middle of a battlefield. Because the rest of the armies will say, oh, they want to do philosophy, we go home. This couldn't have happened historically. And yet they've plugged it in there because it's a nice context in which to present the idea of the philosophy of Hinduism. That's why it's presented in the Mahabharata story. So now what is it all about? Here we see the uniqueness of the Bhagavad Gita. It allows religion to be translated into practice. It allows religious ideas to filter society and allow individuals and society to interact with the ideas of religion, if you like, in the battlefield of life itself. So it makes religions relevant for your daily life. That is why it's a very important script. It's not pure theory, oh, I'm the spirit, I'm Atman. It doesn't talk like that. It allows you to relate to the idea of religion in your own daily life. It makes religion available in daily context. That is why it's an important script, very important. Now again, who compiled it? People say, well, it's a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, so Krishna must have said it. I personally suspect, look, my words are very guarded, that if a great philosopher has really pulled in the gems of the Upanishads and reconciled them in this marvelous text. Now you see, the name that they give to the author is Vyas. Now Vyas actually simply is like a surname, but Vyas doesn't mean an individual who lived for 1,000 years or 3,000 years, because Vyas seems to compile everything. And he can't have lived so many thousands of years. The word Vyas simply means somebody who compiles, who collects together, who thinks hard about these things. So Vyas is a surname. So this is, the Bhagavad Gita comes out of Vyas, but basically what Vyas means is a compiler, without, if you like, an individual putting his name forward saying, I wrote it. We just kind of hide under the name of Vyas. Now what is the teaching of Bhagavad Gita? Very important. It is a text of exactly what I'm teaching you here at Eton. It talks of pluralism, saying that in order for us to resolve our human condition, we can adopt a variety of different pathways. This is the Bhagavad Gita. See, making religions relevant and suited to our daily lives. Suppose it says you are an active person, active in society, you don't need to be an ascetic and disciplined in the caves. You're working in society, you're perhaps a family man. How can you translate religious ideas into your life? He said, look, live well, follow the aims of life, which is to, if you like, focusing on trying to resolve the human condition, dharma, create wealth. It doesn't say run away from wealth and hang on to poverty. It says create wealth, artha. It also says fulfill legitimate desires. It doesn't say bottle up your desires. It says make sure you harness them, otherwise it will create a muck in your life. So harnessing your desires. And then at the end it says resolve the human condition, moksha. What is it? Why am I feel very kind of shackled. I wish to break free from the limitation. These are the aims of the Bhagavad Gita, the four aims of Hindu life. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And again he says that in order for you to fulfill this particular process, they allow you a variety of different pathways, plural pathways. So you can be a very kind of a simple person, ordinary person living ordinary life, and still fulfill this aspiration to recognize your spiritual dimension. So this is a pluralistic tradition. It encourages pluralism. It allows us to make spiritual progress using variety of different ways. The pathways that Krishna talks about is the path of Gnana. Just through mere intellect, you can see the world in its true colors, in its true form. Gnana. You can adopt the path of meditation, looking inward to resolve your human condition. Path of Raj Yoga. You can resolve your human condition through devotion. Suppose you are kind of infatuated with a God in the heaven. Nothing wrong, says Bhagavad Gita. Go for it. Through bhakti. He said, no, I am an active person. I just need to, how should I live my life? He says, yes. First of all, be active. Don't be a lazy lot. Secondly, act in a selfless manner. This is the whole heart of religion. When we act for our own personal interest, we are becoming mean and small and losing our spiritual status. When we start to live for others, extend the people we'll care for and look after, take on more and more people, that is karma marg. And that is again the teaching of Bhagavad Gita, not running away from life, but embracing life. So it allows a variety of different approaches in religion. It reconciles them at a deeper level. Even the idea of God as a personality, as a supreme personality, and as well as God as your inner natures, Atman. All these concepts are nicely intertwined, interwoven, and reconciled in this simple text called the Bhagavad Gita. But in fact, what I've been teaching is nothing but the Bhagavad Gita without the tops and the tails of the word Bhagavad Gita. These ideas of pluralism is central in the Bhagavad Gita. The idea of spiritual humanism, recognizing our dignity, is also Bhagavad Gita. Reconciling them is also Bhagavad Gita. That is why it's a lovely text to keep in your hand. In fact, my mentor, Swami Vivekananda, look, he's an enlightened personality of very high caliber. One textbook he used to keep with him when he was traveling in America, UK and so on, was the Bhagavad Gita. And whenever he felt his batteries need to be recharged, he would pick up the book, sit in some corner, turn the pages, and this is a real story recorded. Every time he would read some of the verses, tears of joy would flow from his eyes and make his clothes wet as if he's been sitting in rain. With that tremendous devotion to this marvelous text called the Bhagavad Gita. Who compiled it, whether it's got historic foundation, I have no clue, because it goes back into antiquity. But the material it possesses, if you like the reconciliation of every good aspect of Hinduism in one small textbook. That is why Bhagavad Gita is part of the central text of the Hindus.
Free e-learning course in Hinduism. To register, please visit www.hindu-academy.com.
Talks on Hinduism. Sponsored by People Care. Encouraging caring for the elderly in their own homes. For more information, please visit peoplecare.com.
There we go. A very interesting topic to explore today. And to carry the conversation forward, we have the full team in-house today. Welcome, everybody. I love the backgrounds that everyone's got. I'm looking forward to the conversation already. Manish Bhai, over to you.
Thank you, Nisit Bhai. Wonderful topic today, Bhagavad Gita. We had Gita Jayanti last Saturday, I think. So we thought best to cover Bhagavad Gita today, and we haven't covered Bhagavad Gita in great detail. So off we go. So Bhagavad Gita occurs in this battlefield of Kurukshetra, and there is two questioners and two answers. There is conversation going on between Sanjay and Dhritarashtra and Krishna and Arjun. And it's all happening in the battlefield. So what is the context behind Bhagavad Gita, Vijay Bhai? What's going on?
I think the context, it may sound unusual that he's set in the battlefield in the middle of two huge armies going to kill each other. But the setting, it sounds strange, but it's actually the very nice setting in the sense that ourselves as humans, humanity is also in this battlefield of life, let's face it. And we face of all kinds of issues in life, and how to be a good person despite all the challenges in life. So in that sense, it's a very ideal situation. I mean, it just shows, in the very first chapter of the Gita, when Arjun's grief, when he's grieving, how can I fight all these people, and why should I do that? And I have to fight for dharma against all these people. And these are actually related in real life as well. Quite often we are stuck in a situation, you don't hurt somebody because you like them, but they are wrong. So if you look at it, relate some of the ideas of this Bhagavad Gita in the battlefield, quite often they apply to ourselves as well, if you look very carefully. So in that sense, this book is very, very special. Actually, I'm not surprised, as Jay Bhai mentioned, that when Swami Vivekananda read this book, tears flowed down his eyes, because there's so many answers in that book on how to live a life in this battlefield, we have. Because quite often we can't judge. And Gita is such a wonderful guide to help us. So as ironic as it sounds, that is in the battlefield, it also applies to us in the battlefield of life. Sita?
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful book, and as Dad said in the video, it's unlikely that this conversation actually took place on an actual battlefield, but it's a wonderful metaphor, as Vijay Bhai said. It's the metaphor of our life. We're constantly faced with so many challenges, and what the beautiful thing about the Bhagavad Gita is that it contains a lot of the philosophical gems at the heart of the Upanishads and all of that. But a lot of the time they're very sort of difficult to understand and difficult to comprehend. But through the context of the Bhagavad Gita, it helps us understand it in more sort of more commonplace language, in a language that we can understand. The context is much more relevant to us. So in a way, the Bhagavad Gita brings the philosophical heart, which was sort of, you know, in the caves of India, and brings it out into the marketplace, brings it out to the general population. How can we, you know, we talk about all of these esoteric ideas like everything is divine and there are lots of different pathways for making spiritual progress. It all sounds very nice in theory, but the Bhagavad Gita shows us how to put it into practice in our everyday life. And the wonderful thing is, you pick and choose the parts of the Bhagavad Gita which suit your temperament and suit your particular approach. So if you're very devoted by nature, you're very emotional by nature, and you want to build a relationship with a personality, with form, you read those verses of the Bhagavad Gita which talk about that. And if you are very active by nature, you read those verses which tell you how to be active in society but still remain intensely spiritual as well. So it's got a bit of everything for everybody. And the wonderful thing is you can sort of mix and match different approaches based on your temperament. You may be a little bit active, but you may also be devotional. So mix and match and put them together. So you can tailor make your spiritual approach just by reading this one book, the Bhagavad Gita.
That's wonderful to hear. And as Jai Bhai said, Bhagavad Gita is the most important Hindu book. Most Hindus will have a copy of Bhagavad Gita in their house. And many of us try to read and understand, but the problem is that it's in Sanskrit. And there are so many different versions of Bhagavad Gita. So how do we understand what it actually means? How do we get to the bottom of it, Sita-Ben?
Yeah, so there are a lot of interpretations out there. We tend to sort of focus on the one from the Advait Ashram. That's the sort of angle that we like to take. But just be careful where you're looking at various sources, because, you know, sometimes people may misinterpret certain sections and put it out of context. So just have to be very careful as to which sort of version you read. But the other thing is, yes, it's written in Sanskrit and many people don't understand that language. But the wonderful thing is you can look to modern prophets like Swami Vivekananda, who talks in great depth about the Bhagavad Gita in his complete works. He goes into such tremendous detail, and he's able to explain it in English, in a language that we can all understand. So that's probably a very good place to go if Sanskrit isn't a language that you understand. But it's also lovely to look, if you are understanding Sanskrit, then it's a wonderful way to look at the Bhagavad Gita, see it in the sort of original format, original context, and you can try and interpret it yourself. But yeah, it's not the end of the world if you don't understand Sanskrit. We've got lots of modern prophets and seers who have explained it in a language more applicable to us. Vijay Bhai?
Yeah, I think Sita very nicely explained. All I can add is that it's not unusual. I mean, if you take any text in the world, even the so-called monotheistic faiths, which have only like the Quran or the Bible, even they struggle. There's so many interpretations. And for them, it's a problem because you're not supposed to have them a deviation. But in Hinduism, it's quite common to have different interpretations because we allow that, freedom on how to see God and how to see the divine. As a matter of fact, if you look at all the great Vedanta acharyas of India, Shankara, Ramanuja, they all have done their own, bhashyas. And if you look at all the Vedantic schools that we have, which is, again, Advait, Vishuddhadvait, Shuddhadvait. If you look at carefully, they tend to use these three main scriptures, which is, they call them the Prasthantrayi, with the Upanishad, Brahma Sutra, and the Gita. And if you look at the Gita Bhashya by Ramanuja, which I have a copy somewhere, it's different from Shankara. But if you look very deeply, actually, they're not different. It's just the way, because one sees, God as Sagun Brahman and one is Nirgun Brahman. So it depends on how, as Sita mentioned, on temperament and what suits you best. You take the interpretation with you and the other one. But ultimately, they all go to the same school. I think it's a good thing to see. Personally, I think it's a good thing because I have other ashram one here as well with me, and I have the one with the, Ramanuja. Also one got with the the Dvait tradition. I goes to one from the Valbhacharya tradition. The thing is that actually it's very nice to see these different thoughts and different kind of thoughts spring up because of the backgrounds. In many ways, it's kind of a nice to analyze all those. Of course, you choose what suits you, but it's not something that bad. But as Sita mentioned, also reading in Sanskrit cannot be easy sometimes. If the scholars themselves are struggling to interpret that, I mean, what chance do we have? But hey, I think, but generally the message which is in the Gita comes through, and it's a very beautiful message.
So that's a very interesting point you brought out there, Vijay Bhai, that different people will interpret it differently based on their background. So what the true meaning of Bhagavad Gita is, probably most of us will base it on our understanding, and it will never be absolutely 100% what Krishna meant. Am I right in saying that?
Oh, well, the thing is, Manish, a good point. Actually, it's nothing wrong in saying that it's my own interpretation. You're not supposed to follow something blindly, as Sita mentioned. You're going to pick what suits you best. And how we interpret it. Look, there's one verse, there's one chapter, I think it goes on the idea of the the idea of the good and the bad, demonics, and just about all the bad qualities humans can have. I think chapter 12 or 13, all the good qualities. People will understand it on their own way. What does courage mean? What does compassion mean? What does means the following dharma mean? So people are going to say, oh, to me this means that, and that's okay because humans themselves are divine, and we have tremendous inner strength in us. As Vivekananda says that the entire world is inside us. It's just got to discover it. So in a way, Gita has to discover who we are. And of course, the paths you take will vary slightly different. And actually, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It may sound like, oh, I want an absolute perfect answer, only one possible answer. But actually, it may sound good in one sense, but it shows that you're not your boss anymore. You're actually asking for somebody. Go yourself, investigate, study the Gita, and see how it changes your life. See what gems you can get which influence your life to progress spiritually. And for everyone, they'll see the Gita slightly differently in their own lives, depending on what state they are in, what kind of stage they are in life, what position they are in life, and what their temperament is. And that's a good thing, I think. Sita?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's wonderful. So the kind of impressions, the kind of characteristics that we have developed in ourselves through our past actions and our past thoughts and all of that. So what usually tends to happen is that those kind of characteristics and things that you see in the outside world, whether it be through this particular book, through the Bhagavad Gita, all of that. So you will start to resonate with the parts of it which attract you, which are already sort of resonating within you. So it's almost like a honing beacon. You kind of like draw on the things which relate to you naturally. And that happens in a very sort of organic way. It shouldn't have to be sort of shoved down your throat. You just are more attracted to the parts which relate to what's already resonating with inside you. So I think that's the wonderful thing. There's something for everybody in the Bhagavad Gita because it's a complete summary. It's a complete picture of what Hinduism is all about. It's all about this pluralistic approach. It's about how we understand the universe. So it doesn't just talk about the different pathways to God. It talks about the three gunas, the way that the universe is classified into sattva, rajas, and tamas. And it tells us how we can sort of apply that to our own lives because our characters are made up of a mixture of different things. And it tells us to move from being inactive to becoming active, from becoming active to become balanced by nature. So all of these things are very, very helpful in developing our character, which can help us in the long term.
That's wonderful to hear, Sita Ben. I think a couple of times covered how we put Bhagavad Gita in daily life. So when we look at chapter 1, it's about Arjuna's dilemma. How do I fight my own grandfather and all the relatives, my cousins and friends and Guru as well. And the second chapter goes on about Krishna trying to convince Arjuna that he should fight. And the second chapter contains what you call a great topic of Atman and what we are as a physical entity. So could you please go over that, Vijay Bhai? What's happening here in chapter 1 and 2?
So I think, as you mentioned, Manish Bhai, is very, in the first chapter of Arjuna is in a dilemma, fight or not. I think that Krishna in chapter 2 is a big chapter of knowledge in a sense, right? It explains, look, Krishna, who do you think you are? First of all, is asking, are you this matter? Are you this spirit? Are you type with emotions? And the chapter actually explains what your true nature is. You're actually the Atman. You're not this body. And of course, it goes through the things that Jay has covered so many times, that life contains two chains, chain of pleasure and chain of pain. We are tied to both. Actually, we transcend both these ideas. And the chapter 2 focuses on that. It tells Arjun, look, the Atman never dies, the Atman is never born, it's always eternally free. It thinks it's bound. So even when you're fighting, you're actually not dying, or you're not dying. You're already free, right? So in effort, it's very detailed separate the two out, who you truly are. And everybody out there on the battlefield, on the other side, which is Bhishma, Dronacharya, Vidura, all these people who are in the the cover of camp. Actually, they're all Atmans, already free. So tell Arjun, look, what you're fighting here is not fighting for emotions and material stuff. It maybe you'll gain that fine as a secondary stuff. You're actually fighting for something much bigger, which is, as you know, is dharma, idea of dharma. But the key thing in the chapter is Krishna is trying really hard to explain to him, look, you are not this, what you think you are. You are far more than, you are the Atman. And to free him from that idea, and then to make him first get this in his mind, so that he can be prepared to take the battle of fighting for dharma. Yeah, that's the key challenge in chapter 2. So that's why chapter 2 is known as chapter of knowledge. And knowledge of what? Knowledge of the Atman. That's why it's really special, chapter 2. Yeah? Gita? Sorry, Sita. Gita and Sita.
Yeah, no, I think, as a lot of people think, we all sort of promote the idea of non-violence and all of that. So why is Krishna, who is, one of the main sort of personalities of Hinduism, encouraging Arjun to go out there and fight? And I think what he saw in Arjun is, he was in a way hiding behind the excuse of saying, this is my family and I shouldn't hurt them, because he was hiding behind cowardice and hiding behind that kind of thing, rather than sort of saying, oh, it's because I love my kith and kin and all of that. So Krishna is telling him, come on, get off your backside. You have to do something. You can't just sort of hide behind cowardice. This is your duty. You're being completely trampled on. So you have a duty to stand up for yourself. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people think, is that Hinduism is very sort of pacifist and, you do non-violence and you don't hit back, you don't retaliate and all of that. But actually the Bhagavad Gita is very practical. It says, if your dignity is being trampled on, you must get up and do something about it. So that's the sort of metaphor. Don't hide behind cowardice. Don't hide saying, oh, it's because I love my family. No, it's cowardice to not stand up for yourself, stand up for your rights, and it's your duty to do so. And then Krishna tells him the broader picture, because obviously we are not just physical beings. It's very easy to forget that, we are more than that. And Krishna is reminding Arjun that actually, remember, all of us are spirit at the end of the day. And it's only a temporary phase that we are in this physical body, in this physical frame at this moment. Ultimately, we are the spirit, we are divine. And this is just part of a grand sort of play that we are all participating in, and we should do our duty at every opportunity that we can.
That's very well put, Sitaben. And this reminds me of Swami Vivekananda, whose favorite sloka was Klebyam Masmagama Arjuna. Don't be coward, Arjuna. And I think Swami Vivekananda said that was his favorite verse. Could you elaborate on that? Why did he say that?
Yes. So I mean, that's the message of Swami Vivekananda, is strength. If there's one thing that you can pull from all of Swami Vivekananda's teachings, it's strength. And his life was a complete demonstration of strength. He, was fighting adversity, had so many physical ailments himself, and he went out there in a boat to America, and he did all sorts of things despite all of his own sort of problems, and his family going through a lot of hardship. So his life was an example of strength, and what he taught the world was this idea of strength. And the Bhagavad Gita is a book that he loved, as Dad mentioned in the initial video. He carried it around with him. It was the thing which sort of kept him going. Whenever he felt he was losing strength, he would turn to the Bhagavad Gita to give him that strength again. So I think it's wonderful that, you know, he loves this concept of being strong in the face of adversity, because life is hard, and we've all learned that as we grow up. It's not a bed of roses. There's a lot of challenges that all of us have to face, and the only way that we can get through that is by being strong. And the best sort of strength that you can get is by being spiritually strong, because if you're spiritually strong, you can support yourself in every aspect of life, every challenge that is thrown at you. Vijay bhai?
Not much, Sita, perfectly covered. I think all I can add is that when it comes to following the path of dharma, there is no shaking. It has to be firm. And to be firm on the dharma, path of dharma, you have to be strong and strength. I think quite often, sorry to say that, I think the idea of ahimsa has been so ingrained into us since the time of Gandhi that we actually forget that strength and firmness in following a dharma is actually very important. And if need be, if you have to fight for it, you have to fight. You cannot just run away. If you do that, we are in trouble, right? So we have to really be firm and be strong.
That's wonderfully put, Sitaben, Vijay bhai. We got one quick question. Why is Srimad often written before Bhagavad Gita? Vijay bhai? Because sometimes there's a Bhagavatam, it's called Srimad Bhagavatam, and Bhagavad Gita is Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Why is Srimad put in front?
Oh, Vijay bhai, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sure. I think Srimad is actually used mainly in the ISKCON tradition, I believe. They use a lot of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. I think it refers, I don't know, I guess it refers to Vishnu, I guess. But I'm not totally sure about that, to be honest, Manish bhai.
I believe it is just a mark of respect for the for the knowledge in the book.
Okay, yeah.
Sitaben, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, we always use the word Shri, which is a title of respect. So yes, I think that's what it is. It's just a title of respect for our central text.
Right. So we go to Charmaine, who's saying, I feel the illustration of carriage, the chariot, is a perfect summary of the human condition. Keep the senses under control, and the body and mind and soul will be guided by higher soul to divinity. So there is a lot of this kind of metaphors come in Bhagavad Gita, and there's a lot of what you call symbolism there. Anything to add on that, Sitaben?
Yes, we've got this example in the scriptures as well, which is the metaphor of a chariot and a charioteer. So, you know, the body is the chariot, and, you know, the person who's driving the horses is the mind, and the horses are the senses. So the mind is being controlled by the senses, and, you know, we are in this chariot of the body, but we think that that's what we are. Whereas actually who we actually are is the person who's riding inside the chariot, who's not involved in any of the external activities, but who's just the eternal witness. And that's who we actually are. We are the Atman. So it's a beautiful metaphor to help us understand this very, very sort of subtle idea. And I think it's wonderful that it's somehow integrated into the context of the Bhagavad Gita in this way. Vijay bhai?
Yeah, nothing more to add, really. I think that's the key idea, that the person in the chariot itself is actually already free, but he thinks that he's attached to the chariot, which is the whole body. And of course, the chariot is the intelligence, the reins, the mind, and the five horses, so to say, the senses. So the key thing is to understand that we are not part of the chariot, we are separate from it, really. Yeah.
Wonderful. So we got a wonderful question here. As we said, Arjuna was in dilemma, and Krishna is trying to, you know, persuade him to fight. The question is, what is the fate of those who have faith but don't follow scriptures? So let's say, what happens if Arjuna don't follow Krishna's advice, and what is the fate of those? Because many of us, we are realistic, we read all this, but in terms of putting it into practice, we are always lacking, and it is always a challenge. What can be the, what is the fate of those, Sitaben?
Yes, it's probably a good thing that Arjun followed Krishna's advice for sure, because that's the guiding light. Krishna is the guiding light, and it's a good thing that he did. But I think that's the challenge that all of us face. Is it requires a great deal of strength and bravery to actually go forward on our spiritual path. And even though it may be a difficult path, it's really important to keep going. And I know that Swami Vivekananda says, the Bhagavad Gita tells us to act and work incessantly. And even if you go out there in the world and make mistakes, go and make those mistakes, because that's how you learn. If you just sit in a corner and stagnate, you're not developing, you're not progressing. So it's better to go out there, make mistakes. Even if you do, nobody's perfect. We all make errors. It's better to go out there and do something than to just quietly sit in a corner and being scared about doing anything or taking a step wrong. So action is better than inaction. That's one of the sort of key messages of the Bhagavad Gita. And it reminds us of the context in that we are just sort of, acting out in this play of the world. So don't take it so personally. We are just trying to rediscover who we are by acting in the world and doing what we think is our duty to the best of our abilities. Vijay Bhai?
Yeah, Manish Bhai is a very important question. I think he's asking, what is the fate of those who have faith? I mean, of course, we all have to have faith that there's something more to us than the body. And I think Gita is a very good scripture to help us in answering those fundamental questions. But look, some people are very spiritually involved, and if they don't want to follow the scripture, but they're already highly spiritual, then so be it. But I think one thing to keep in mind, scriptures can really help you. They know the ultimate source. Ultimate authority, of course, is yourself, which you find for yourself as you experience, as Sita mentioned, and you develop spiritually. But Gita can be very useful in that idea. But no, there's no bad fate if you just follow your faith. Yeah, it's okay too. I mean, I quite often, I take in my class, Hinduism class, I take the example of Mirabai. I mean, she was so intensely spiritual, she technically doesn't need the Gita, let's face it. She's already high up. Krishna lives in her. But for us, scriptures are good. They help us, guide. So, yeah, that's what I can add to it, Manish Bhai.
It's a good answer, Vijay Bhai Sitaben. So, in chapter 3, we get, karma yoga being taught, importance of karma, in Arjuna trying to explain why he should be doing his karma and not forfeiting and running away from the battlefield. So in a way, Krishna is advising him for Arjuna for karma yoga rather than devotional or even the part of meditation. And some people would tend to, mean that to say Krishna is advising karma and not other way around. If you try to, follow just chapter verse quote, is that so? What's your take on it, Vijay Bhai?
Interesting, because we actually cover chapter 3 as part of IGC syllabus in quite a lot of detail. But if you look at the start of chapter 3, the very first 2-3 verses, actually Krishna is asking that question. You've just told me that the pathway of knowledge, the idea of Atman being separate from the body, I'm already free, all this amazing stuff you just told me. And now you're telling me I'm a karma mark to go and do my duty. So what are you saying, Krishna? But look, everybody is different. Everybody has got inherent abilities. And I think for Arjun, his inherent ability is to actually fight for dharma. So I think Krishna was trying to tell him that, look, for you, in your case, fighting for dharma selflessly, not for any benefit, to fight for dharma is your goal in that sense. And it's a very powerful chapter because as Sita has been just talking just a couple of minutes back, is to fight for, selflessly fight for the truth, fight for dharma, without any benefit whatsoever to yourself. And this is what this chapter 3 talks about. In a way, chapter 3 is very, very powerful, especially when it comes to doing your duty in that sense. There's also very, just on a interesting verse in that, which I've been asked by a lot of students. There's a verse in there which goes that it is better to do your duty, imperfect than do somebody else's duty in a perfect manner. And people always ask me, and I think what that verse represents is that, look, I'll give you my example. I work day and night. I do my job really perfectly, which is, I work as an engineer. But that's not my innate strength, innate ability. It's something else. So in effect, I'm not really doing what my inner strength, because in a way I'm not maybe scared, or maybe I don't know how to pay the bills or whatever. But everybody's got an innate ability in us. Use that ability selflessly to change the world, basically, yes. And quite often people who have done that, who have gone their own path, not following the norm, have actually changed the world. So in effect, quite often we have something in us which is immensely powerful. We follow that path. We may make mistakes, as Sita mentioned, but that innate strength in us, which is something which we know we want to do, that is the path you should follow, even though you may make mistakes. Rather than something else, you're stuck in a job, okay, I did well, but it's not a bad thing, I'm saying, but it's just like, so that this is really telling Arjun, look, go out and do your use your innate strength, which is the Kshatriya strength, and change the world, basically. Follow your dharma, change your world. So in effect, in that sense, chapter 3, karma chapter is very, very powerful. Sita?
Yeah, no, I think you've covered it amazingly. I mean, the thing is, at that particular point in that context, Karma Yoga is the path that Arjun had to follow, because what is he going to do in the before a battle is about to take place? You have to do something. So I think that's why it's particularly relevant. And another thing which I really love about the path of Karma Yoga is, when we do any action, or when we do any sort of good action, we always try and think, oh, I should get some kind of recognition for it. I should get something in return. But in a way, that's the wrong attitude. It's very easy to act like that, but we have to keep working at ourselves to say we shouldn't expect anything in return. Whatever good action we do, we should take it with the attitude that I'm just adding one extra little grain of goodness to the world. And because if you expect anything in return, you live like a slave. Your hand is out expecting something in return. Whereas if you sort of live like a master, like Swami Vivekananda did, then that's really, you're able to really do good karma, good action, because you're not expecting anything in return. Just take the position of being a giver in the world, and that's all that matters.
That's very well put, Sita Ben, and liked your answer as well, Vijay. Very wonderful answer. So I think, Sita Ben, you just covered that verse, Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phalesu kadachana. Do your action without your self-interest. And there is some other verses that goes on, Sukhdukhe same kruto labha labho jayajo tato yuddha just one nevam papamas. That, balance your sukh dukh and all the other advantage, disadvantage, and do your action without the self-interest. Is that what is meant? If you could just summarize that verse, Karmanyeva adhikaraste, Sita Ben.
Yeah, so it's just saying, do your duty, and whenever you think that you should act in a sort of, wanting something in return, whether it be recognition or praise or whatever it is, remember that's not the right way. And it's a difficult process, and that's why the Bhagavad Gita tells us work incessantly, keep working, because the more you work, the more you can chisel your character and say, no, I'm not going to expect anything in return. Because, we often think we don't want to be sort of bound to the world. We don't want to be attached to the world. And Swami Vivekananda uses the beautiful example of, it doesn't matter what your chain is made out of, if it's made out of iron or if it's made out of gold. The fact is, you don't want to be chained down at all. If you are in a prison, you don't think, oh, my chain is made of gold, so I'm okay, I'm happy with that. No, surely you don't care what your chain is made out of. You just want to break free, whether it's the results of bad actions or good actions. You don't want to be attached to either of them. So we want to break free from this prison of the world, and the way we can do that is by not expecting anything in return. Vijay, bye, sorry.
No, I think, Sita, you've covered it so nicely. I mean, that's the actual gist of the message of the Gita. I mean, if you look at all the verses, they take the same topic from a different angle, but the idea is, if you renounce, you become a master. As simple as that. If you attach to the fruits, attach to anything, you're bound. No matter how powerful you are, you're still bound. Let's face it, right? You may have a big house. You say, oh, I'm really powerful, and I'm the president of the country. Where you got a big house, you're bound to that house because you can't let it go from your mind, right? So in effect, that's why Swami Vivekananda is a master. He's a master because he renounced everything. So the whole gist of the Gita is that if you renounce, you become the master. It's simple, because you're not bound to anything, right? So this is the key message. Every chapter I look at ultimately comes to say that same kind of conclusion.
Okay, the wonderful answer there, Sita and Vijay. So viewers, sorry, we are not able to take general Q&A, but we are trying to take some of your Bhagavad Gita questions. So because this is such a vast topic, it's not able to, we are not able to finish it quickly. And this might go on till the end. So we may not be able to take some general questions. So we got a question from Kunal. He's mentioning his words about Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya. He's saying, my question is, Lord Krishna said, I take birth on this earth to establish Dharma. But what we see is that Kali Yuga started after the lifespan of Lord Krishna. So isn't that contradictory? Vijay?
True, it sounds in a sense contradictory. I think the one thing I must clarify one thing, because although I know that the idea of yugs is very popular in the Puranas, personally, I think we as of now we're living in a very, very good times. It may sound bad with all the wars we hear, but compared to the past history of humanity, we're still living in a good time. Actually, Dharma, we have a very good chance now, especially because the world is more aware, it's more educated. They think world thinks far more, they spend more time in thinking things through. We have huge amount of panels, communities, a lot of international societies are working together to make a world better for us. So in many ways, Dharma is actually, there's a good chance that Dharma will establish and become more prominent. So in a way, I think let's keep this Yug thing. I know it sounds strange, which is the idea of Puran on the side, and let's look at the world as it is now. We still live in a pretty good world. I think people are moving more and more. People are getting more disgusted by war. People want to change the world, climate change. We're all looking positively to how to change this. It's a battle, no doubt, because we want the good stuff. We don't want to pay the price for it with all these issues. But nevertheless, humanity is coming out from children being taught in schools, people thinking for themselves. We have a very good chance of building a better society in the next few decades. So that's all I can add to that, Sita.
Yeah, I think you've covered it amazingly. I mean, this idea of the yugs, as Vijay said, is it's not from the scriptures of authority, so we shouldn't get too hung up on that, I think. But what the verse is saying is that Krishna will sort of, whenever there is a need, Krishna will come and sort of interact, or God will come and interact with the world and try and right all the wrongs of the world. But I think the sort of really important thing to remember is that we are all God. According to the Advaita philosophy, we are all God. We are here in this world. We are faced with all these challenges. We're faced with all these problems. And it's our duty, because we are the spark of the divine. It's our duty to do something about it, to roll up our sleeves and get cracking and do the best that we can. We may make errors, we may make mistakes along the way, but we are God, and we are here to try and resolve our human condition and hopefully help the rest of humanity along the pathway as well.
That's very well put, Sita. And so I think it also pertains to the thing is that we have so many, God-realized person coming and realizing and then giving this message. And this comes out because we have continuous stream of people, God-realized people coming down, even as recent as Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramhans, and we have Anand Mahima. And so this validates that fact that it is a continuous, ongoing phenomena, and we continue to have people who keep coming down and to guide the humanity. Am I right in saying this?
Yes, Manisha, absolutely, yes, yeah. Sita just covered, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got a question from Bhajan Addict. He's saying, does the team recommend a certain publication of the Bhagavad Gita, the Gita Press, or ISKCON version? Vijay?
Okay, the one I have, I'll just show you to you. I got it in front of me. Is by Swami Nikhilanand from the Advaita Ashram or from Ramakrishna Center. It's so simple and so straightforward. The verse is very simply put. You cannot be confused with what is written. It's very easy to understand. But of course, if you want to go in deep reading, you can read the bhashyas of Ramanuja, the bhashya of the Shankaracharya, but that's quite deep, heavy stuff. But this is the one I use. I mean, I won't say you must for this one. This was the one I like. So that's what I'll say to this. No more than that, Sita.
Yeah, not much more to add. That's the one I would go for as well, for sure.
Okay. That's good. We'll take the next question. So Charmaine says sound was very important in ancient times. And are the Gita and Ramayana, which are poems in Sanskrit, meant to be chanted rhythmically, to vibrate in our chakras, to raise our consciousness, Vijay?
Okay, I think the sound, the nad, is very, very important. Ancient times are very, very important. And the thing is, I've noticed also myself when I read something, if I'm really into it and I feel very spiritual charge, my words should be much better sounding and not be rough and croaky, because you're into it, right? So sound, of course, is linked to the idea of how you breathe, your pranayams, rhythms. So rhythms are very important. Or the ragas were seen as very important in ancient times, because the way you read something, because don't forget these poems you written in for Ramayana, like Ramayana in the Tulsi Ramayana, they're written in particular verses. I mean, Tulsi Ramayana, of course, in the Awadhi Hindi text, but all these books are in particular Sanskrit meters. So the idea is if you read them in a rhythm, it makes you feel more attached and more kind of sync with it, more sync with your body, with your breathing. In that sense, I guess, if you could do that, it's very good. But if you can't read the book anyway, that's what I'll say to it. But regarding the idea of chakras, I've heard all this, how chakras are aligned, but I'm not an expert in it, so I really can't comment. But yes, Nad is very important, and I've seen that because I went to my father's Gurukul, and they have a Sanskrit school there, and they're very, very serious about how you chant, how you pull the voice, when you read the Sanskrit, they're very serious about that. And you must follow it to the door. They don't allow mistakes in how you chant. They can read it, no doubt, but the way you chant is serious business in Sanskrit. But I'm not an expert, so I really can't say more than that, Sita.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's definitely a value to it, and it's something that's been recognized since ancient times. So that as Vijay Pai said, if you're incredibly orthodox, then you have to read it according to the right meter, and everything has to be perfect. But if you can't do that, it doesn't make you any less of a Hindu or anything like that. So please don't worry if you can't do that. I think the most important thing is that you try and understand the heart of the message, whether you read it in meter or not.
So Ellie Sebastian is asking, are there any recent films of the Gita, possibly with English subtitles or even in English? I don't think there's any movies. You might get some lectures, or we had this Mahabharat TV series where I think some chapters were covered on Bhagavad Gita. But there is no series or films on that Bhagavad Gita, I don't think. Vijay Bhai?
No, I don't know of any specific, only Gita only. But I think the last version of the Mahabharat, I don't know who the actors are, but it's a huge, I think it goes over 300 or something old episodes. As a good, I think 30, 40 episodes in the middle, is dedicated only to the Gita. So I think it's worth having a look at those. But in Hindi, that's the thing. I'm not sure dub in English, but they're reasonably good, I would say, right, to cover the mess of the Gita. It's but I guess ultimately it's how you read the Gita is very important. It's very beautiful. And what you think also matters, by the way, in how you understand the Gita. Sita?
Yeah, I mean, as Manish Bhai said, there's lots of, TV series about the Mahabharata, and I grew up watching those. So it was really nice as a child to sort of learn the story through these TV series. But I haven't come across anything about the Bhagavad Gita in that way. But I think the best place to go, it was the place that I keep going back to, is Swami Vivekananda's complete works. He goes into so much depth about the Bhagavad Gita. So it's a beautiful place to get a deeper understanding and interpretation.
That's wonderful to hear. We are running out of time, just got 6 minutes to go to the end of the hour. So summarize Bhagavad Gita, and in the last chapter, Krishna says, Mamekam Saranam Raja. How do we interpret that, Sita?
I think the key sort of message about the Bhagavad Gita is something that Sri Ramakrishna said very cleverly. What he said is, if you reverse the word Gita, you turn it into Tyagi, which means renunciation. And that's the key message of the Bhagavad Gita. So whatever path you choose, the path of bhakti or karma or jnana or Raj Yoga, ultimately what we are all trying to get to, the same destination, is renunciation. Renunciation of the fruits of your actions, renunciation of this idea that you are the body, this renunciation of everything. And that's literally like our get out of jail free card. That's how we can get out of this constant cycle of reincarnation, which will go round and round the circle of going in nappies or going to school and getting a job and doing that hundreds and thousands of times, it gets incredibly tiresome. So having this idea of renunciation is our get out of jail free card, and that's what the Bhagavad Gita offers us. Vijay Bhai?
I think that's basically the message of Gita. I mean, that's why it's called transcendental, because how do you escape these mundane things you're attached to? And how do you free yourself and truly become your own master? And as long as you're bound to things, it doesn't matter how you're bound, emotionally, psychologically, materially, physically, all that, those will actually bind you. That means you're not really free. And that's what renunciation is all about. How to transcend this idea. And ultimately comes the same question that, Jay Bhai always says, how do you resolve the human condition? This is a human condition. This is it. This is what he's saying. How to resolve the human condition is to transcend all these things. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sita and Vijay Bhai. The one yoga that we don't generally, the two yogas take over the bhakti and karma, but the two that gets left is Gnan and
Yoga,
yoga of meditation. Sorry, I was forgetting that. So I think we'll have to cover it some other day because we are running out of time. Over to you, Nisit Bhai.
Sorry, technical troubles. So what an interesting session, and the time has flown past. When we have a fantastic, engaging topic like this, the viewers and us, we all get into the flow of it, and then we see blink of an eye and it's an hour gone already. And like Manish Bhai said, there's still so much yet to cover. So perhaps we will roll this over onto another session at some time in the future. But for today, I'd like to say thank you to everybody who's really engaged with us. There's so many new people who joined us, so many of the regulars who are here with us, and we appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time out of your busy days to be here with us today. I would like to share a quote. This is a quote reportedly from the Bhagavad Gita, but I like this one because it says the yoga is the journey of the self, through the self, and to the self. I hope that everybody here is on that journey to discover who they are for themselves. And that's all Hinduism is about. And so I would like to take a moment to say thank you to the team here who've done a fabulous job with handling today's session. So much information to share with everybody, so much insights, and some amazing, wonderful knowledge for everybody to take away. So folks, we look forward to seeing you next week on Saturday, 2 o'clock as always. And with that, we wish you a great week ahead. Bye-bye for now.